Welcome to another episode of the CEO Story with Paula Silinger of Rickety Rack. Paula, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're going to dig into your background and your amazing story of immigration all the way through to growing your own business, the ups and downs that have gone along the way. But before we start, we'd just like to say a quick thank you to Together CFO for being a great sponsor of our show and helping us to produce some good content that's going to help impact thousands of people. So if you or anyone you know has any tax liabilities over $200,000, please click the link below and go check them out. You can do a free tax calculator to see how much you can save on your taxes. So if that's anyone over $200,000 in taxes, go check out Together CFO. And thank you, Together CFO. But now, more importantly, back to our main stage. Paula, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for taking the time to join us. We've got some amazing nuggets of information to share today, so I want to jump into it. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Rickety Rack and how you guys started and what you guys do? And then we'll go backwards and then we'll make our way to today.
Yeah, so Rickety Rack is an e-commerce company and fashion destination for women. It's been profitable since day one. It generated over $1 million in sales in its first 24 months. Wow. And yeah, it's been a great ride. I have customers in over 50 countries. I've dressed women for the red carpet, bridesmaids for weddings, girls for homecoming and prom, and everything in between. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing all my wild stories with you.
Yeah, so it's really good to kind of get a little deeper, and you see people in their highest moments and they're feeling fantastic and emotions are running great. So you get a really good connection with people. So that's really good. But if we go back to the beginning, how did you come up with the concept and the idea of starting this business, and why did you pick this specific niche?
Oh yeah, so I had been selling fashion online. Originally, I went to school for journalism and gender studies, so it wasn't the plan to start a fashion business. So I graduated from the London School of Economics. This was 2007, and was applying for internships at the United Nations and women's rights magazines. So I get a call from Ms. Magazine in Los Angeles, and they want me to go and work for them. And that's a huge deal. You know, Gloria Steinem co-founded the magazine. They celebrated their first anniversary on a boat with John Lennon and Yoko Ono. So it was like a huge deal. I flew to LA, actually drove to LA with all my belongings, and started working for them, but it was an unpaid intern, as most internships are for nonprofits. And so I had to make some money and just kind of became an opportunist out of necessity. Basically, they had a room full of books there, and they said, we're done reviewing these books. You can do whatever you want with them. So a couple weeks passed. Nobody's doing anything with the books. I had just sold my dad's records on Amazon. So I took the books and put them on Amazon and made $14,000 and said,
oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I could do something now. Finally, I could get my own apartment. I had been living with really weird people who were doing like naked yoga. So I mean,
LA for you. There's some very weird and wonderful people here.
Yeah, so I got my own place and was doing really well selling clothing on eBay at the time. But eBay has, I mean, they have like AI bots, artificial intelligent robots that basically scan their site, look for patterns, look for duplicate listings, remove the listings. I had my own original content. I had original photos, descriptions, and another seller came along and wanted to sell the same product, stole my images, stole my descriptions. The eBay bots came along and flagged both of our listings and removed both of our accounts. So the algorithm,
like that, overnight, gone.
Locked out of the account. I mean, primary source of income gone. So I call customer service, and it's like talking to robots. You know, they're
pretty much, yeah,
like reading off of a template. Like there's no way to regain access. So that was an important turning point. Back then, you could sell clothing on eBay, you could sell it on Craigslist if you were lucky, or you could sell it on your own website. It's not like today where you have all these platforms, Poshmark, Mercari,
Etsy and
Depop,
yeah,
Etsy, exactly.
Pinterest and
So
so on. Yeah.
I decided I was going to do both. I was going to sell clothing on Craigslist in the meantime for some fast cash, and then I was going to build my website in the meantime. So I committed myself to doing nothing else but building the site. It was the year 2011. I locked myself in my apartment, and the entire year I coded the site, I developed it, and I grew a social media presence. Kind
With
of
no background in any of this, right?
no. I mean, I had taken coding courses and like programming classes in college, but yeah, and they didn't have like website builders like they do today. They gave you
Drag
like
and drop, yeah.
yeah, a raw
Quick type
template
stuff.
where you had to add like advanced CSS and JavaScript and HTML and your own code to make it look shoppable almost. So that's what I did, and I was very, very, very fortunate because in the year 2011, you had the social media giant Pinterest being developed. And this site created like a new wave of sharing online. So you had like Facebook and all the other social media apps that were mostly text based, and Pinterest came along and it was a visual organization of people's likes. And so they were sharing their favorite recipes, hairstyles, products from pages.
I tell you what, I used to use Pinterest for. I still do today. I'm sure it's still in there. But I used to create vision boards for myself and just have
Yeah,
images of like things that I aspired to
yeah.
buy and
It
like
was super easy to understand too. That led to the success of the company. I mean, they went in 2 years, they went from zero to like a $1.5 billion valuation. I know people on the site went from spending 10 minutes on it to an hour and a half daily average. So I didn't even know about Pinterest. I was just shut in my apartment building my site. And the way I found out that I was getting all of this free traffic to my site through it was early 2012. I wake up and open my laptop and I have 300 new order notices in my email. And I had been getting a few orders here and there from retaining my eBay customers, but 300 new orders like overnight. And then tracing where these customers were coming from was pretty easy. They were all writing, I found you on Pinterest. Like they were super excited and they were all ordering the same dress. So I said, why is everyone ordering the same item? And it's because that item had been reshared 20,000 times overnight. So it was like a viral pin.
So did you initially put that on Pinterest or was that
So,
someone else?
yeah, I had no idea what Pinterest was. So when I got all of these emails and orders, I kind of backtracked into the whole technology, myself with it, and saw that they had like a save this pin feature that everybody was using,
Like a
and
bookmark, right?
like boom, I need this, and of course after that I developed a business account with them. But yeah, I was completely unaware of their presence until like I was flooded with orders. So
Amazing. So let me just recap that. So
yeah,
initially you were on eBay 100%.
yeah,
Things were going great. It was selling, growing, doing really well. Someone came along and hijacked you.
yeah,
Customer service threw you both out rather than actually doing the right amount of due diligence and figuring out what was going on.
right.
And the moral of that story is don't have all your eggs in one basket, whether
Yes,
that's eBay, Pinterest, Amazon, Shopify, wherever it is. Make sure you always have some backups in play so
yeah,
that if the worst case scenario happens, you don't have to start from scratch. And ultimately, I think if you controlled some of those client relationships directly as well, which
yeah,
also helped. So one of the things that we used to do when we did a bit of e-commerce back in the days was drop in some personal card of some kind into the packet so that they could get on your own subscription list or newsletter or something along those lines to
yeah,
build that direct relationship. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. But the second thing was there may still be many big platforms that you don't know about that could just change your business overnight.
Yeah, and I was so thankful for Craigslist because that's actually how I met a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model who ended up being the cover girl for my website.
Wow.
So I had groups of people showing up to buy clothes, and then one girl shows up and I recognized her right away. I had seen her on a show called Project Runway.
Okay, yeah.
I couldn't place her name though. She was a model on the show. So she came in and tried on these designer dresses that I had and took them with her. And when she was giving me her credit card to pay for all of that, it said Melissa Haro. I said, no way, you were on Project Runway. She's like, yeah, she's very humble, nicest girl in the world. Today, she's a successful real estate agent. So that networking was priceless. And who could have known through Craigslist?
Yeah, it's one of the shadier websites out there, but it definitely does connect people. And it's back to the point at which, you know, if you've got these platforms that you know about, but there's so many things out there that just searching and putting the time and effort into figuring out what platform or what next thing can help you elevate. One of my mentors says you're 15 minutes away from having way too much business. You just got to do the activity to get into that 15-minute zone. And that's a great story of overnight kind of hitting a home run. So how did you then expand your Pinterest profile, I'm assuming, after you had all this business come through there?
Yeah. So I was continuing to build a social media presence, not only on Pinterest, but Facebook as well. That's another funny story. In 2011, Facebook had some real traction. Like today, it's just advertisement. You can't even find your content, it seems. But back then, it's like you had the traction. And I remember the famous celebrity back then was Justin Bieber. And anytime he made a post, you had tens of thousands of girls just in his feed,
in his likes, yeah.
And like, this is a great base. So I would just copy and paste my website link anytime he did a post. I think he posted once a day. And so every time I posted the link, I would get an immediate 300, 400, 500 likes to my company Facebook page. So, I mean, in a day, you could just get thousands of free likes, and through word of mouth. And a lot of these girls ended up being customers, grow it just organically.
That's really good. There's obviously a lot of advancement since those days on all social media platforms, but I think the key takeaway I'm hearing is you've got to do the work. Like if you weren't there, if you weren't monitoring a celebrity or whoever the target audience is, and then doing the copy and paste, and it's a simple task, but often gets overlooked to put in that amount of effort and work consistently. It's easy doing it once or twice, but if you can do that dedicated day on day, month on month.
That's the thing, is those small steps ultimately lead to those big wins. It's kind of like an avalanche, these little pieces of snow or little efforts, all of a sudden accumulate and lead to something really fantastic. So, I mean, to anyone who's listening and wanting to start something of their own, it's really those small steps that are the most significant.
Because the small steps compound and become big steps.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that's really important. So you mentioned earlier that you turned 7 figures within the first year and you were profitable pretty much straight out the bat.
Yeah.
So can you share some tips around that? Because so many times, especially now with the crazy VC world that we're in, you see so many companies that will go get a $10 million fund and never really turn a profit until year 5, if ever. And that really scares me to some degree because they're just trading on multiples and not off a tangible business. But for the people out there that actually want some tangible advice to grow a business that they can scale, can you share what you did to kind of make sure you were efficient through scaling through the sizes from 0 all the way up to multiple 7 figures?
Yeah, I don't know if it was because I was living in a really small apartment at the time and I didn't have a lot of storage space, but the last thing I wanted to do was accumulate a lot of inventory and have a lot of overhead. So I came up with a very kind of unique strategy of, in the same way kind of drop shipping works, but doing it myself and only ordering products once the customer had made an order themselves. So I made a great connection with the wholesale suppliers in the fashion district in LA, and they had a great website with product images of all these up and coming samples. So I was able to transfer those to my site and test the response of each of those products. You know, most people, they would go to like trade shows and they would order these like massive quantities of what they thought or what they predicted would sell. And it was based off of maybe runway shows, runway fashion, market trends, just really kind of, you know, it wasn't solid science. And as a consequence, they ended up with too much inventory. So also, I lived like a hop and a skip away from my suppliers. I could get in my car and be there in 5 minutes and bring the inventory back and ship all of my orders same day. So it wasn't very risky. It wasn't like I would be getting orders for inventory I didn't have and have an issue shipping that. So that actually appealed to investors who approached me afterwards. They wanted to acquire a little bit of my company. They really liked this kind of new approach because it wasn't being really used by anybody. And they knew.
All right, so let me just kind of digest that into smaller chunks for the people listening, because you said a couple of great things there. One is drop shipping. Let me just explain what drop shipping is for the people who don't get it. Is where you take an order for something and then you go buy it later and then ship it. So effectively, your cash flow cycle is positive straight away because you're receiving, let's just say, $10 for a t-shirt, and then you're going and buying that same t-shirt for $5 and you're shipping it for $1. So you've got your profit straight away before the transaction, before you do anything. So that's really good. And like you said, investors like that because it's cash flow positive straight away rather than having to wait a period of time. So that does not surprise me that people like that model. And that's changed a lot as well. But secondly, you said logistics. So you could still provide that level of service that people really like when we're used to Amazon same day or next day shipping. And you get that really nice feeling when you've ordered something and then again when it shows up. So you could also provide that service where if someone's drop shipping from China, as an example, you're going to be waiting weeks, if not months, for that product to arrive. So you're hitting many different layers of benefits for the client now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And speaking of extreme kind of growth, you know, I had watched a major clothing website that was very similar to mine take in a lot of funding from investors and just shoot up and experience this explosive growth. And it actually led to them filing for bankruptcy. So there were a lot of important lessons to learn just watching my competition. And that is another solid piece of advice for people who, you know, really want to kind of just be successful and avoid a lot of the pitfalls from people who are doing it before them or alongside them.
Yeah, one of the other things that you mentioned is you were kind of not going off your own gut feeling or what you thought, but you were actually saying, oh, here's 10 samples. Let's see which one or two of these actually perform well, and then double down on that style or brand or whatever the item was, as opposed to placing a big order for 1,000 units of hats that you think are pretty cool, but didn't actually sell. So
it's also a good strategy because especially in today's market where there's just saturation everywhere, everyone's offering everything, customers will really indicate what they can't find. And that could just be your niche. You know, they will indicate where you should go, what direction you should take.
So how do you encourage that indication? Because we're getting a little bit further down the lines, but I think it's a really good point. So if you've got a client base and you think they like this yellow hat, what are you doing to engage them in saying, actually, we don't like the yellow hat, we like a green hat, or whatever that is, in order to get that community built or that kind of feedback from clients?
Yeah, well, in my cases, I just flew with, I mean, My sequin party dresses actually ended up being my niche. For some reason, a lot of other sites weren't offering that. They were doing more casual looks. And so I began this whole marketing strategy with being kind of like fashion that was a cut above or a step above, like the ordinary basics you found at shopping malls and retail stores.
So you're having a good differentiator and kind of doubling down on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. No, I think that makes perfect sense. And then the next thing that I had to talk to you about was kind of the immigrant mindset and kind of the way that I know your family obviously came from the Czech Republic to America. How did that impact you and kind of give you a drive to achieve something?
I mean, it takes an insane amount of resourcefulness and discipline to make that sort of a leap. To put it into perspective, this was 1980, communist Czechoslovakia, and my parents had family and friends, and my dad had a master's degree there, already established, very comfortable. But it's a communist regime, you know, they want to leave and start a better life, make a better life for their family. So I mean, they sold like a speaker and a stereo and their records and put like $600 into a little secret pocket of a carry-on because you couldn't leave with luggage, you know? So they had to just make up a story that they were going skiing in France for the weekend and apply for separate visas and board like the train separately. So, you know, they're confronted, just to put it in a perspective how crazy this was, by an officer who squeezes the toothpaste out of the tubes and says, where are you guys going? Fortunately, he didn't see the money that they had stashed in the pocket. And they said, we're going skiing in France for the weekend. And somehow this passed the test and they ended up in Paris. And in Paris, they said, you can't go to America yet. You have to prove that you're not spies for the government, you know, because they're from almost the Eastern Bloc. And yeah, you know, you have to take classes and learn English and apply for sponsorships. So, you know, fast forward 9 months and they make it to America. And going back to the resourcefulness that took, that was ingrained in me. That was a core value. It was like I had like an extra set of eyes everywhere I went to look for opportunities and really utilize my environment to benefit, basically.
No, that's really important because, you know, there's a few things that I always circle back to, and that's drive and passion. You can't really put that in anyone. They either have that or they don't have that. And if you grow up around, you know, a big change, I obviously had a similar, so not obviously not as drastic as your families, but moving from Europe to America, starting afresh, even though we speak the same language, the culture is very different here. So I could only imagine how much more difficult it is when you're coming here with nothing, no language, very little money, and you've literally got to build the American dream. And it's so true that it does exist. And for the right people that are willing to put in the work and the effort, we're both prime examples of that.
Yeah, my mom's half brother hijacked an airplane to leave the country. I mean, there's like a whole Wikipedia page about it. And I mean, think about that for a second. Think about the country you're in right now. I mean, are you willing to hijack an airplane to leave the country? And if not, like, there are just so many privileges and opportunities we have around us that a lot of people maybe aren't aware of because they haven't had that struggle in their life. And as an example, when I came to LA, I was blown away by the wholesale district in Los Angeles. You know, it sits 25 miles above the port of Los Angeles, that's America's port. That's where, you know, a big chunk of the cargo.
It's the busiest port in the world, right? Oh, sorry, in America at least, yeah.
Yeah, it's America's port. And when I showed up to this fashion district, I'll never forget that day. It was like the missing piece of my puzzle. Like, I've found my suppliers. They're all here. I have all the other pieces of the puzzle. This is it. And I snapped it into place. And it was just weird though, because people who were born and raised in Los Angeles, it was like they either didn't know about the wholesale district or they knew about it and they didn't think it was a big deal. And that blew my mind.
You know, I want to add something to that. And I wake up and I have kind of a very strict morning routine. the first thing that I always think of is gratitude. What am I grateful for today? And kind of being in the moment and being present and visualizing and things like that. And like before I meditate even. But a lot of that goes back to we think differently because we grew up in different environments. Whereas the majority of people that were already here before, it's already their norm here. So it's how do you get out of your own way and discover what's right on your doorstep or virtually right on your doorstep so you can excel to those next levels, whether that's through networks and resources or whether it's physically jumping in a car or a bus and going 5 miles down the road and figuring out the pieces of the puzzle that ultimately can help connect everything together.
Yeah, and you always hear comfort zones kill, and it sounds so cliche, but it's so true because one of the main things my parents really liked about America is how comfortable and how convenient everything is here. That's, I mean, a big reason why they came here, to make a better life. But at the same time, you see people getting into their comfort zones, and it makes sense because in order to survive, like safety meant survival. When you look at our evolution, safety meant survival, but surviving isn't the same thing as living, and
comfort zones kill. I love that. I'm going to use that one. Definitely agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to keep pushing yourself and keep getting better every single day. As long as you're improving by 1% on the person you were yesterday, you'll eventually get to a good level of success, and whatever success means to you, because everybody gauges themselves differently and success means something completely different for everyone. But if we just pivot back to your business for a minute, what do you see as the future trends coming up within the next 6 months to a year, and how are you planning on scaling your company to the next level?
It's amazing how much people care about sustainability today, and it's appropriate. Look at the state of our planet. And actually, I was wanting to implement and partner with this organization called 1% for the Planet, because I found out that only 3% of philanthropy is towards the environment, which just was amazing to me. So the sustainability thing is where we're headed. That's the future. And I feel like Amazon's the giant now, and it's just kind of like taken over everything. I mean, even for me, like it became very convenient, this last holiday season when I couldn't be with the people I loved, just to order everything and bam, like it showed up to their doorstep in an hour. And when you have that level of convenience, it's hard to compete with that. But I do feel like people, will kind of see through, that level of just dominance in the market and how many negatives or cons come with that. And a big con would be, kind of like a disregard for the products and how they're made, and
also the workers. When you mentioned Amazon's, and we can talk specifically about some of the cases where they're trying to unionize and not being successful, and they're working their people really hard to the point at which they're collapsing at their warehouses and being rushed to hospitals and not allowed to take breaks. So the human side of it becomes more strained because they put these, like you said, it delivered within an hour or the next day, and now they're starting the drone delivery and kind of all of these efficiencies, because we as the end consumer want things like instantly right away. But the strain that puts on the logistical side of things to deliver that in such an efficient way actually will eventually put people out of a job, because robots will be doing it so much more efficiently. And we started seeing that with Alibaba and the way they run their operations in China. But I think the younger generation are definitely more eco-friendly, more people focused than the prior generations were, like compared to the boomers, like the Gen Z and the Gen X are all getting more and more progressive in that way. Even down to shoes. The last pair of shoes that I bought were on running 3D design sustainable shoes, and it's like, it is really the future trend. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think the key question that emerges is at what cost? At what cost do we have all of this? You know, putting carbon in the air, for example, at what cost to the environment?
Yeah, and then you get all of these carbon neutral initiatives and the Paris Convention, and a lot of it is not even worth the paper it's written on when you really dig into it and read what they say. So I definitely agree with you on that. So I want to thank you, Paula, for your time. And where can people reach out to you and get to know more about you and your company?
Yeah, every social media platform @ Paula Silinger. If you want to look into the company @ Rickety Rack.
Fantastic. And we'll put the links down below. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. And if you stuck around this long, you can hit the button up here or the button up here for some more interviews similar to this. And remember, RICKETYRACK.com. That's the place to go to get your stuff. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.